Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 146 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, I keep trying to think of how to do some of the money stuff. We've had some other questions and emails and talking about, buying a studio or opening or different stuff like that. And so we'll try to touch on a few points here. I don't have the whole thing together, but I didn't learn this all at once. I've mentioned you've got to get your costs together. You got to understand what it's going to cost to do business. And that's, you got to have your consumables. Some areas, especially with the industry, some areas are closed shop, and so there may be union concerns that, if you're not from that area, you may not think about it. It's kind of like people that live where it snows a little bit, like down south, they don't think about snow in terms of months, and they don't think about mud season, and they don't think about all the ice jams that'll blow out your buildings on the sides of the brook or the river, or take a bridge out or stuff like that, because they've never seen anything like that. Well, the locals are like, oh yeah, well, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. You put that there and it's going to be gone by spring. Take it right out. So it's really important to learn the area where you think you want to work. You need to ask the hard questions, and you probably ought to ask questions about the whole thing without, if you're looking to do business with one person and buy their place, you may want to ask around and see if other people got opinions, because there may be things they bring up, like, well, yeah, that piece of property is an ideal or whatever. There's a lot that goes into it. I was very, very fortunate to get into this business, and literally from the time I started at Gary's, within a week, I went from beginning as an apprentice to my first trip to Elberton to start my own studio. 3 years in 1 week. It happened really fast. But I came into this as a fluent carver. I've carved my entire life. I came into this, I'd already been through college. I'd already been through a full culinary apprenticeship, and I'd already trained people, in terms of culinary. I'd been through an auctioneering apprenticeship, an auctioneer. I became a colonel way back in the 80s, and long before I even started, my culinary, really serious culinary stuff. I'd have done some kitchen work, but so because of being an auctioneer and being in sales, then I had also worked as a contractor, both with some building trade stuff and as a caterer, as a chef, and doing regular events planning inside. I understood numbers in a way that, someone that just loves to carve stone may not understand. And I knew there had to be certain things. So all of these things put me in a very unique position to move forward quickly. And you may have a completely different skill set than I do, different experiences and everything. But you got to know your operating costs, your consumables. You got to know your overhead. If you got to have different kinds of business permits or insurance. If you got employees and you're going to have, unemployment insurance and workman's comp, and if you offer health insurance, all that stuff, it adds up really quick. And you can't just start it and then, by the way, I forgot that, and not do it for 6 months or a year because you're legally obligated to cover those expenses. So be very careful. And you may start something, I worked with a company that had set up a retail shop out of his basement, in a neighborhood that was restricted. I didn't go too well when they found out all this stuff, and pretend he worked somewhere else and he wasn't doing all the work there out of the driveway and behind the house, and you know, be careful because those things will turn around and bite you. You know, there's just a lot to it, and I don't really know an easy way to put it together. I also wanted to go back and touch on comments I made in a previous video about not really having a process in terms of carving to teach you how to carve. The hardest part, I think probably the more difficult part, it's very easy to do a study of something all by itself. You do a hand, or you do, you know, Michelangelo, David's ear, you know, you've seen that, I guess that's up on the wall here. If you do just part of a face or gesture work or whatever, you're just trying to capture something real quick, that's real easy to do. The hard part comes not in doing a mouth or a nose or, you know, doing the eye. The hard part comes when you have to marry those to each other, because they all have to be in proper proportion, scale, and spatial relationship to each other. And they all have to be, you know, symmetrical enough that one's not up here, or rotated or tipped or something. It's real easy when you're doing a face, you know, and you're working it up, and you're trying to make it look like it's got, you know, like it has a certain expression. You may carve that expression on the face so that the planes of the face are incorrect. And instead of having the front of the face as where the eyes are in a plane, you'll have the eyes skewed to try to give it emotion and make it look like it's alive. And you get in trouble really fast with stone doing that, because you may not have the room to correct it. And as I talked about carving things and having them migrate apart, that's part of doing all these feathers and all this stuff. You'll develop with experience, you'll develop an understanding that it looks wrong the right way, okay? You'll carve, you know, especially if you got two figures, you know, Marian child, Christ, you know, Marian the Christ child, whatever, wings in the body. You know, I know that this is supposed to go clear up here. This is all extra bulk. So this wing is going to look weird here because I can't even get to her belt because her belt is all up in here. You know, this is the tip of her elbow, and you know, this is close to the bottom, and if you can see here, this fold right here, you know, her elbows, it ends, this is all bulk material that's got to come off. But, you know, remember I said, we're waiting to make sure we put the hand in the right place to articulate the rest of the anatomy the right way to get everything to agree. And so, and that's where people get into trouble, is they start carving too aggressively, and they fixate on one part of it, and they carve it. And they shouldn't do that yet. They should wait a minute, because they're not ready to carve that much of it away yet. You know, this has to be, I've got to work this, and some of this is going to go away, some of it's going to stay just like it is. But I've got to get this leg tip just to have this curve here to curve to her knee and make it good. And so, like, this point is supposed to be on top of a fold, and it's down below the surface, which means I got to take this off. But I want to get this nice, graceful curve in there and make it look really good. And so, just get used to slowing down and really understanding things before you take off a lot of material that you probably shouldn't. You should probably wait. And but I'm just going to keep working on these feathers. I wanted to bring that up. Get some clay, work with the clay, learn how to make things fit, and you'll find there's certain there's certain parts of when you're modeling clay and sculpting in clay that, you know, if you're using your finger doesn't fit. You got to figure out a way to get down in there and smooth it up, and it's really hard to get the tool on the right angle to make it work. But then when you put a chisel on it, you're going to be putting the chisel on in a completely different way. So it's important to practice and to try to get better at it, because this takes a long time. Okay, so but I wanted to bring those things up and work on your agreements, and I'm just going to keep working this off. I'm going to push all this down. I'm going to get this together, and I'll go from standing working here, and then I'll go to sitting down, and I'll work on shorter and shorter until I get where I'm doing this whole rough layout of this feather. And so time to start carving. As I'm working this down, and I'll bring the camera over to show you, I don't want this to get too tall. I'll push this back. As I push this back, I'll sink this, and then I'll go back to match it, because I don't want this to get really tall. It'll be fragile, it'll be apt to break. I don't want to break and split it, have to go into the edge. I talked about how things are going to change as you carve them, and how you got to be able to perceive what something is and what something isn't. You're going to have different lengths if something is either at an angle or it's more flat. And this is what I'm going to show you where I open this up. These feathers may look really short compared to the model, because right now this is more like a drawing. This is more like a 2D, because it doesn't have a lot of three-dimensional profile. As this sinks back and goes back in here, we're going to add quite a bit of length, because it's going to go from being flat to being tipped. But it's going to tip back to that same top line, so you're going to add, you know, if you go this far, and then can you see that? If you go, like if you're here, if you tip this to that level, but you're still going to my finger. See how we added like an inch of length there? Okay. So you're going to look at a model, and you're going to go, oh wow, that's going to be a lot longer, and you make it longer here. But then when you cut it, it's way too long, and you've lost space on the other things. This is what I said. Trust your model and trust your method, okay? Don't get ahead of yourself. We got to put this back in shape. This is supposed to go back quite a bit to be, you know, what the model shows. So this has got to sink an inch right here, and that's going to pick up quite a bit. It's going to make that feather a lot bigger. And this is one of the challenges that you'll run into when you work with somebody that's doing a full size. If you have somebody that draws what you're going to carve that isn't you, and they usually aren't a sculptor or a carver, it's real easy to draw something. You can draw anything you want on a piece of paper. It's no problem if you can draw. To turn that into a carving takes a whole different perspective, the ability to see where you're going. And that's one of the real dangers. I'm not saying you need to hide your work from your patrons, or the people that are buying it from you, but it's very common to show what you're doing, you know, in stone or in clay or whatever, to someone and you show them it's in progress, it isn't ready yet, and you show it to them and they lose their lunch. Oh my God, that looks horrible. That's all wrong. You can't put that there. That doesn't work. And you may have stuff in the wrong place because you may have screwed up, but an awful lot of times you got stuff in exactly the right place, and it's exactly the right dimension for the stage of the carving that you're at, and they don't understand that. All they can see is the pretty stuff at the end. They can't see the process. You know, they can't see the sausage making process, or whatever you want to call it. You know, you take a perfect piece of stone and smash it all to pieces and make it look all crazy in order to do exactly what we want to do with it. And a lot of people simply can't do that. Okay, so you have to be able to succeed in spite of what they don't understand. And so you have to be careful about how you present it to them, because sometimes it's just not time to show it to them. So be aware of that. And it's, you know, my studio is open for anybody that's, you know, wanting to come see what I do. You know, working on this stone, they're welcome to come see it. But I have to be very straightforward and say, you got to understand, I know what I'm doing, and you know, you may not. So you got to trust me, because if they see some detail and they just totally flip out. We'd had that with a model not that long ago, and we sketched it all up in clay, and it was beautiful, but I hadn't got the flowers done yet because they were the last part to do the blossoms. And the potential patron wanted to see it, and I sent pictures, and she says, those flowers are awful. They don't even look like flowers. They're horrible. There's no way I can trust you to carve stone. And basically all she was doing was trying to get out of doing the job because she wanted something that she couldn't afford. And she'd worked with this retailer for years, and she was talking big, and I just, you know, it was really ridiculous, because they were just lumps of clay just to hold the place. And I told her, I said, this is just the whole place. I haven't done the flowers yet. And she just totally lost it. So you've been warned. There are people like that out there. Don't get discouraged. Okay, back to carving. Let me show you, before I do, let me show you the difference here. Okay, see, I pushed this back. This is a 1/4 to 1/2 inch tall here, and this is a little bit taller here than it is here. But we've got a really steep edge right here, and then this flat on top. Then up here I've knocked most of it off. Now, see, I've got a whole lot more room in there to present a feather than it seems like I've got here, where it seems like it's really tight. So just, like I said, trust the method. But I'm going to keep working these feathers back and try to get this into place. Just get this all done. Back to work. Okay, this is a good example. I don't know if the light will show it. I've got just a tiny chip in this chisel on the edge. I really know that I can get the light to show it. So, catch it, just a tiny little chip right there. Get in the habit when you pick your tool up to look at it. And just a quick glance at the edge. I mean, you're going to look at it anyways to make sure you pick up a round or straight chisel instead of a square chisel or whatever. But glance at that edge real quick just to see if there's a chip, because I'm doing rough out work. If I put that little tiny chip, because I just sharpened this, if I put that little tiny chip in there and lay way into it, it's probably going to blow out a great big piece and it'll really wreck my tool. So I got to go back over and dress it real careful on the grinder just to clean it up. You won't catch every single one of them, but you will catch some of them, and it's always worth taking a glance just to see it, because whether you notice it directly or you notice a reflection or whatever, if there's a flaw on that edge, it's only going to get bigger. So go ahead and clean it up. All right, just pay attention. When you're setting your gear up, you know, like I said, I didn't have any pipe around my studio for years. I worked just with a short piece of pipe coming through the wall with a place to hook my hose on. it's a really good idea to put a length of iron pipe and have your air come in on a vertical section. Even if you just got, you don't have any, even if you just got a rubber hose, mount a piece of pipe somewhere that's vertical, that has something at the bottom, even if it's just a screw-on cap that you can screw on kind of tight, and have your air come in the side, you know, the quick release or whatever, and then go up and come out of the top so that it's all vertical. That'll take a lot of water out of your compressor, depending on the ambient humidity, where you work, and what you've got for a compressor, all that other stuff. Because you may have a compressor that builds a lot of water depending on your environment. It just makes a lot of water. You got to keep your tank drained to keep your tank from rusting, because it'll rust out. And if you ever get a rusted out tank, it's junk. Don't try to weld it. It's a bomb, okay? But you'll appreciate not having wet air to blow out, because when you're carving and that exhaust is blowing out and it's blowing a bunch of mist, you get your whatever it hits, it'll get it all wet. And if it's cold like it is now, and you've got a compressor that tends to put a lot of water out, just because it's cold doesn't mean they won't make water. And if you've got to deal with the cold with it being wet on top, it's really nasty. Okay, so you know, think about putting just a vertical section as a drop and have the air come in towards the bottom, you know, horizontal, and then go straight up, and then have it come out. You can just mount it to a board or an upright post or something like that, and that'll help catch some of your water as it goes into your hose, and that pipe will chill it and the water will fall out. And then when the pressure isn't on, if all you've got is just a cap on the end of that or a plug, you can just unscrew it and take it out. It's tedious, but then when you can afford, you know, a ball valve or whatever, you can get it and drain it, and you'll be able to use all that later as you plumb your studio up and do more. So, this is coming pretty well. I wish I could convey how much bigger this makes her by having this depth right here, because I've taken this back 3 inches, 4 inches there on her arm, taking a lot of stone out. That really changes her presence, and that's what I was talking about. Don't get hung up yet about all of the finer details. Trust your process. We're going to push that wing back and carry this down and get that flowing so that wing is pretty close to where it needs to be, just without the detail. And then after that, that will make her so much more voluminous. She'll have all this volume, and then we'll be able to start addressing her and, you know, get all this chaos straightened out so she flows really nice, and then take a little bit off of here, and without injuring the job, we can resolve this, make this a lot smaller, and it's going to change the way she looks so much. Okay? Trust the process. Just keep going slow. Back to work. Well, I think it's about time to wrap this video up. Say a few words here at the end. Start on the next video. It's next morning. Got a few minutes. We've got a video person coming to do some video for some promotional work for an event that we do here in the county every year. And I'll throw this out. I haven't really talked about this much, I don't know. And y'all, if you've been watching, you'll notice this. You start doing this work, and you do much of it, you're apt to have some fans and have some people that, you know, want to know what you're doing. It might be newsworthy, you know, whether you're doing it all the time or you're doing some event, you know, some special piece for, you know, local installation, and, you know, the nearby TV news people want to do some video or whatever. Make sure that if you're doing, especially if you're doing granite is very reflective in terms of light. And it doesn't seem that way because it's a very flat, muted gray, or blue, you know, like the Georgia blueberry gray stone like this. It just looks very plain. It doesn't look all shiny. We haven't polished it. But it has a tremendous amount of crystal structure in it that when you turn the light on, you know, just like whenever I turn the light on, and it, oh God, it's cold, so probably the light won't come on forever. You know, it makes the, if this will work, it makes it really, really bright. And what will happen is that your video people that are experts, all right, there's my light, it comes on now. They're a lot smarter than me. You know, just ask them. And they'll come in and they'll get out their light meter and they'll hold it up and they'll see what they like. And then they'll put their spotlight on it. And your carving, the cool thing, in some ways it's cool. What it ends up doing is that your carving, if you got a completed carving, will look just like a correct full-size line drawing, because all you'll be able to see are the outside edge lines of it. You'll lose all your value, you'll use all your gradient from light to dark. It'll all become washed and it's totally, totally white. And, you know, maybe it looks cool, but what's going to happen is that the people are going to say, well, man, Button, I thought that'd look better on TV. That's all you do. It just looked like a bunch of lines cut out. That didn't look like no carving. Yeah, you're right, it doesn't. So you have to talk to them about how you light your stone to be photographed, to be captured, because otherwise it's just going to look like garbage. So, so that's something to consider, you know, and as you're lighting, you know, it took me a long time to learn how to take photographs of my stone when I had to use, you know, additional lighting like a flash or whatever, and how it looks if you shoot the flash straight up, if you bounce it off of a, you know, you have reflectors, you know, the umbrellas that are Mylar that reflect light, or a piece of tin. You have to figure it out. And it's eminently easier to do that now with digital cameras than it was when I was trying to fumble my way through with a film camera during my apprenticeship, because I wasn't taking notes about the aperture was this and the f-stop was that and the blah blah blah, and I use this kind of, no, I was like click click click, that's pretty cool, click click click, and the stone is gone, and I never saw it again because it was going to be 500 miles away in just a couple of days. And then when you get it back, you're going, well, there's 12 pictures that look like garbage and one of them that I can use. So I developed, you know, a whole roll of film for one picture, you know, for $4 or whatever. People don't remember those days. Some of us do. So, you know, you'll learn about lighting, learn about how you want your studio to be seen. You know, I added, you know, we cast these models, hung up on the wall. Now I've got something kind of cool to see, because when we first started, everybody's like, well, it just looks like that's kind of like just, oh, he got a garage somewhere as he works in. No, I don't, it's not a garage, I built a studio. Just looks like an old garage to me, okay? You're gonna have to learn to take some criticism to do this work. Your biggest critic is gonna be the stone. The stone's going to teach you how stupid you are and how incapable you are and how subtle the stone can be in clarifying your shortcomings. And if you've got thin skin, if you've got thin skin, you can't take it and pound on stone, you know, because your skin won't last. You know, you're going to have to be able to do this and say, yeah, I can do this, and yeah, I'll get better. And there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to, I don't know how to put it, they're not going to be the best fans in the world. You don't need them. Look at my views. You think if I was going after clicks that I'd keep doing this? You know, we're almost 150 videos into this, and you know, I get 100 views on a video and it tops out because Google buries me in the logarithm and doesn't show me everything, and I do a little simple dumb video about something and get 15, 20,000 views in no time. You know, I've got friends that are doing videos that are just as technically involved as what these are, but in different topics. You know, and he'll post a video and get 1,000 views in just a few hours. Okay, he can't cut stone, but I can. So you got to be satisfied and happy within yourself, you know, and I don't get all kumbaya and all this other stuff and how you need everybody gets a gold star, because you don't. This work is not about getting a gold star. This is about doing it, and you either do it or you don't. And you either get better or you don't. And you'll get better to a point, and then you'll top out, and that's all you can do. And you've got to be able to be satisfied that once you achieve a certain level and you sort of plateau, you may not improve much beyond that. That may be your best work, period. That's what you can do. And you may never move beyond that. So get as good as you can be at that level. And don't quit. Just hang in there. Keep pounding stone, because it's awesome cutting stone, man. So even if nobody gets it and most people don't care and they don't understand, you got to be the one that's happy with it, and then it won't matter. But think about how your studio looks. You know, if you think you're going to have any interactions with people, and don't just make it a poser studio, make it a real workspace. And by virtue of making it into a real workspace, it will become relevant in a whole big different way than just being a token little, you know, coffee shop, cool looking place. You want it to be a workshop, because this is about work. You know, I like they're coming to see my fancy studio with rain muddy floors, and you know, because it's January and it's 40 degrees, and this is real, man. All right, get into the next video. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.